A bright beam of energy burst out of the window into the sky, rushing far beyond the temple of the great shaman. Now, in the abyss, against the backdrop of a dark purple sky, a white, faceless human figure could be seen. Through the resulting portal, sparkling with lightning, Downs found himself in a gloomy place. The passage between the worlds began to tighten, glowing golden, and Lucas quickly headed towards the exit from the abyss, loudly calling Iris with him. Turning around, the creator god coldly noted that the hero had returned quite quickly, standing opposite Downs. Lucas looked at him with bewilderment. The blonde began to look around, not understanding where the guys had gone, and asking why the creator god had arrived alone. But he only showed his awareness with drawn-out sounds, throwing a sly squint of yellow burning eyes at Lucas. Downs concluded with satisfaction that they had already returned. The blonde was shocked by what he heard, widening his eyes and asking, during the war with his hands behind his back. Downs said with complete seriousness that the decision rested only with Lucas, the creator, without taking his eyes off the main character, invited him to become his comrade. Looking at Downs with incomprehension, Lucas said that his interlocutor already knew his answer. Opening his yellow eyes with round patterns wider, the deity asked if the young man was really going to confront him and Lucifer. Lucas's eyes glowed blue, and he stated that he would be grateful if they fought. That one would be left with serious wounds. Closing his eyes and grinning, Downs concluded that people were so simple after all. He explained that his battle with Lucifer would not end with the simple death of one of the parties. The defeated would be absorbed by the winners, and as a result, both opponents would become one body. Lucas was taken aback when he heard that if he did not take either side, he would have to resist the joining of forces. Casting a piercing glance at the young man, he would not be able to win. Lucas grinned and mockingly stated that he was terribly grateful for the warning. He asked the deity not to worry, declaring that he would take care of his own affairs. After these words, Lucas left the Downs, heading in the opposite direction. Among the abyss, twisting magical matter began to form. The succubus queen really sat on the ground, holding her side and looking expectantly into the distance. Lucas appeared in front of her, and the red-haired demoness asked in bewilderment who he was. The blonde, ignoring Riley's question, asked gloomily where Shur was, rising to her feet and holding her hand. The succubus queen realized that in front of her was in her real form the one she knew as Frey, and was surprised at his incredible divine power. After the young man repeated his question, Willis began to shake with irritation, thought with a frown that he always talked only about his own things. The demonist said, that Asura is most likely in the castle, where he is probably taking countermeasures. After breaking the black dreams, Lucas was very puzzled and even shocked by the fact that, in addition to Asira, all the lords had gathered in the castle. Then the guy decided to clarify whether Lucifer was among them, to which Willis answered in the affirmative. The succubate queen explained that if Lucifer did not manage the entire process, then the rest of the lords would not be able to hold a normal meeting, adding that she also needed to get ready, and the blonde wanted to meet without Lucifer. After some deliberation, Lucas turned to Riley's with a request to take him to Waljibo Castle. The heroes found themselves in a hell of burning blood next to a scarlet lake in this space filled with red light. Flies were flying everywhere. Standing on a cliff, Release reported that Waljibo Castle was below, explaining that there was flaming blood in the lake, and demonic flies were flying around. When the demoness spoke about the dangers, Lucas, without further hesitation, jumped straight into the lake with flaming blood, which outraged the woman. A swarm of demonic flies immediately headed towards the guy. Lucas descended into a dangerous lake, having previously surrounded himself with a magical barrier. He calmly descended while Willis, with indignant exclamations, tried to catch up with him on the wings. Lucas quickly went down, and the flow of magical energy around broke. The flaming blood, followed by the succubus queen, having passed the bloody barrier. The main character flew out from below. He carefully lowered his feet to the ground. Lucas and the succubus queen were greeted by giant demonic guards in black suits, with the heads of a goat and a lion. Angry at the intrusion of the stranger, the guard's eyes glowed purple and yellow with rage, and the goat asked the lion if Mistress Willis was near the man, and he only asked what was happening, pointing her hand at Lucas. The succubus queen explained that this is a guest who intends to meet with Beelzebub, and he only looked at her in bewilderment. Holding his hands in his pockets, the demon with a goat's head and a whip in his hand said that this would not do, and the demon with the lion's head furiously asked if the guy was not swinging his fiery whip. The goat menacingly declared that all demogates were considered interlopers. Lucas calmly stopped the demon's weapon. With his hand outstretched, the young man lowered his palm down, causing the fiery whip to fall to the ground. Release, watching this, indignantly asked what Lucas was doing. The goat watched carefully as the blonde rose into the air, nonchalantly noting that the guards attacked first. After that, Lucas extended his legs, sending a powerful blow, backed up by mana, towards the demon. When the goat was defeated, the angry lion screamed menacingly and began to catch the enemy with his clawed paw. The main guard bared his fangs, quickly folding his paws into a lock. Looking at them, the demonic fear was horrified. The paws opened with a trembling and did not close back because Lucas did the splits. Inside, the blonde got out of the trap. He flew up and kicked the guard right in the animal's face. The second demon was also defeated, and Lucas watched as it fell to the ground. After a powerful attack, standing at a distance, watched with her mouth open as the young man dealt with two high-ranking demons. On instant, Beelzebub flew up from behind the frightened succubus queen in the guise of a huge fly. Indignant that the guest would now cause more problems, the Lord directed his red eyes to the battlefield. After examining the bodies of the defeated demons with animal heads, that Lucas did not intentionally kill them, and then added that the guest's divine power was somewhat different. The huge fly hovered in the air next to Riley's, said that he was glad for the attentiveness of the insect's eyes. Looking at Lucas, calmly concluded that this was Beelzebub. After this, the giant insect asked the guest what his goal was, and instead of answering, the ruler was holding a meeting. Beelzebub carefully watched the guest, and he asked the question whether Lucifer was among the members of the meeting. Lucas closed his blue eyes, looking expectantly at the huge fly in the sky, realizing from Beelzebub's reaction that he had claims against the aforementioned ruler. The main character noted the extreme insight of the King of Flies, the demon in the guise of an insect, asked what nonsense the intruder was talking about, and he asked to be taken to a meeting of the rulers. Lucas, frowning at Beelzebub, stated that he had a lot to tell the outbreak of war, and about Lucifer himself. Turning to the Queen of Succubi, the Lord of the Flies clarified whether she really had brought such a problematic guess, and the woman turned away bashfully. Beelzebub, looking at the man, was surprised that he was able to easily enter hell. After this, the King of Flies concluded that this fact added credibility to the guy. Eric roots stretched to the White Castle, and Beelzebub invited Lucas to the meeting, asking him to follow him, the three-faced Lord. Ashira was so shocked to see the familiar face of the young man that he was speechless. The other rulers of hell began to ask with dissatisfaction who was in front of them. Flying into the castle wheels above, informed the crowd that a special guest had arrived and asked them to greet him. The four-eyed ruler glanced displeasedly at Beelzebub. If he had really gotten involved with the a three-faced demon intervened in the conversation and declared that the young man was not a demigod, and his interlocutor, in disbelief, crossed his arms over his chest. Messiah glanced at the indignant Lord and said that in front of them was an archmage named Lucas Traumen. Everyone was amazed at the incredible divine power emanating from the main character, and also wondered how a person could enter this place. With her hand on her hip, the succubus queen, standing next to Lucas, declared that the blonde was truly human, for which she personally vouched. The four-eyed ruler concluded that all three were suffering from group insanity, and turned to Beelzebub with the question of what was wrong with Lucifer. The king of flies, sparkling with his round red eyes, said that Lucifer would not come. The four-eyed sovereign was confused when he heard this. Yeshua glanced sideways, taking sweeping steps, announced that he intended to tell about the plans of the absent Lucifer. Approaching the giant figures of the rulers, the main character suggested that after his story, everyone should decide for themselves whether to believe or not, raising his palm up. Lucas began to talk, and Beelzebub, floating in the air, carefully watched him and listened. One of the lords opened his red eyes wide, and his mouth opened in shock. The four-eyed horned masked demon Barbados was puzzled, hesitatingly asking if hell would really be destroyed. One of Asira's faces twisted his mouth in displeasure. Lucas, with his hands in his pockets, blithely reported that this ending was expected, and in the end, Lucifer, who decided to become the ruler of hell, would absorb the Satan core, began to confidently confirm the guest's voice. The guest. Asira sat and listened attentively to Lucas, standing in front of him. And the King of Flies explained that in this state, it would be difficult to maintain his form. The blonde gloomily stated that there is only one way to prevent destruction. After hearing this, the four-eyed ruler laughed maliciously, saying that Beelzebub had gone crazy. Turning to him, Barbados mockingly concluded that the King of the Flies had been deceived by a man. After this, the four-eyed ruler stated that Beelzebub himself wanted to get the core of Satan, to which he stated that he did not take up gambling, with a small chance of success. The giant insect reported even that Lucifer could not cope with this core, which means that none of those present could cope with it, as the seer continued to sit looking at Lucas below. Barbados asked how he could believe it. Asira looked with his yellow eyes into the face of his friend. Lucas answered him with a look of blue eyes. After this, the blonde stated out loud that Beelzebub was going to place the Satan core in the body of the Dragon Lord, because he has the rights of a ruler and will be able to withstand it, and the body itself will be placed as a totem in the deep part of hell. Stomping menacingly, the angry Barbatus tried to shut up the guests. Filled with magical energy, the four-eyed ruler headed towards Lucas, threatening him with death. The blonde looked at Barbados with a calm gaze. Asherah asked the enraged lord to leave, which made him even more dissatisfied. The three-faced ruler, grinning, concluded that the greatness of hell had fallen to nowhere. After these words, Asura, in a fit of anger, spread 3 pairs of arms to the sides, emitting powerful magical energy. The 3-faced lord went straight to the confused Lucas, saying that he had crossed the line, grinding with anger on all 3 faces. Asura stated that they were connected by many things, so the blonde would die painlessly at his hands, activating a powerful flow of mana around him. Lucas confidently declared that Asura could not defeat him, and his long white hair rose up. The blonde man with flowing hair looked at the ruler with a determined look. Zephyr opened his mouth in shock, and Barbato, standing next to him, asked him bewilderment whether the blonde was really not a demigod. The angry Asura, meanwhile, angrily swore at the enemy and slammed him with one of his 6 hands. Afterwards, the Lord quickly rushed forward, destroying everything in his path and leaving a purple trail of energy. Watching this, Beals above indignantly noted that these 2 were destroying someone else's castle. And Willis, angrily waving her fist, shouted, "What they were doing!" Asura crushed the enemy with his hand with all his strength. Grinning angrily, he cast a mad look of burning eyes at the ground. Under his hand, in the blue glow, the depressed, insolent Lucas appeared effortlessly, spreading his huge fingers. He cupped one of them with his palm. After this, Ace, losing his balance, began to fall backward. Lucas rushed through the air with great speed, leaving behind blue mana. He flew at the huge enemy again and again, striking him after a stream of attacks. Lucas, floating in the air, calmly stopped and looked around with glowing blue eyes. Zephyr looked at the guy with puzzlement, and Barbatos, standing next to him, expressed everyone's thoughts, noting that there was not a single wound on the blonde. Clasping his 2 hands in a lock, the Sura concluded with a dissatisfied grin that his opponent had easily broken his finger. With one hand, now, a weapon appeared in each of the angry ruler's hands. Asura grinned, with his 3 faces armed with clinics, a hammer, a spear, and a magic ball. At this time, Lucifer and the Dragon Lord drew watch from the side. The fierce battle between man and the Lord of Hell. Taking a look at his eyes, glowing violet, Lucifer concluded that Ashira would lose. Then the Dragon King, with 3 faithful wings behind his back, curiously asked why he did not interfere. Tro clarified that he should now go out and reconcile the warring parties in order to firmly convince the rulers. Lucifer turned his head towards his interlocutor and said with a satisfied grin that it was much more fun to watch from the sidelines. Drua gave him a bored look, concluding that he couldn't understand this man, even if he knew him well, Ashura. And Lucas, meanwhile, continued their fierce battle, not wanting to lose. Zephyr continued to stand with his jaw slack, realizing that the man was fighting Ashura in hell on equal terms, and Barbados wondered with suspicion whether the three-faced blonde was giving into. The blonde flying up and hearing these words, Beelzebub asked if the four-eyed lord was mocking us, looking at the huge fly with shame. Barbados admitted that he had misspoken and noted that the three-faced ruler was not like that. The king of flies continued to stare at him with his round eyes. A grid of honeycombs sparkled in those eyes. Thanks to Beelzebub was able to easily notice Lucifer. Watch in them, but the king of flies did not recognize his companion. The demon noted that the guy next to Lucifer had triple wings just like him. Suddenly, it dawned on Beelzebub, but he did not want to believe in his guess. At that moment, really screamed and ducked, covering her ears, because the king of flies, hovering next to her, suddenly flew through the air. Turning purple, the succubus queen became very indignant and shouted for Beelzebub to at least warn him first. Concentratedly watching what was happening, Lucifer ordered Dro to return to the ordinary world. And he glanced at him. The lord in the red coat told the dragon lord that one fly was approaching them. After these words, a glowing blue portal appeared in the air, causing Drod to quickly disappear. From hell, events are transferred to the ordinary world, where devastation reigns and the settlement on Richa Island has turned into ruins. Ivan, who stood closest to Nasdaq, looked menacingly at the ground, and Shui in the air was preparing for another attack, while the others stood in the distance. The jock indignantly turned to the armed golem, clenching his fist and asking why, despite his cuteness, he was so powerful. And Shui expressed bewilderment at these words. The majestically standing priestess stated that Nasdaq's trail had disappeared, and Isabella, holding the brunette, asked with wide-eyed shock if he had fallen. Looking ahead, the armed golem reported that this was not the case. A giant spiral of green mana and sulfur matter formed in the air above the guys, covering the sky, who emerged from it with tentacles instead of limbs, angrily called the guys pathetic idiots. Chiwei, with his head raised, stated that a demigod cannot be so weak, to which Ivan noted that they attacked him well anyway. Isabella, releasing a stream of blue mana, said that it was necessary to push away this energy. Ivan and Shui looked at their bodies in amazement, noticing the blue glow that enveloped them. Clenching his fist, the Muslim man turned to Isabella, who was controlling the energy, and thanked her with a smile. Feeling that his body had become lighter at this moment, the concentrated red-haired girl thought that she was not capable of anything except casting spells and healing, and only Ivan and Anastasia could attack. After which she wished that at least Drua was with them. Now, who was watching what was happening from the sky? Delving into what was happening, the Dragon Lord noted in amazement that the guys were holding up even better than he had expected. Afterwards, however, he concluded that death was inevitable. In the battle with Nasdaq, and I've been loudly noticed from the ground that the demigod had become huge, Stroh continued to philosophize, noting that people cannot dig up their fate. And meanwhile, the guys watched the black-green funnel in the sky. The great shaman began to form seals with concentration, forming purple magic. She surrounded the guys with a protective barrier in the shape of a ball, preventing Nasdaq from approaching them and harming them in any way. Noting the incredible power of death, the shaman asked under no circumstances to leave the barrier. Holding out her hand in front of her, with 2 fingers raised, the woman concluded that if the guys took even a step, they would accept their death. Ivan angrily asked how they could fight in this case. The great shaman said that there was a way to continue the battle if the barrier was destroyed with the help of other opposing forces. Anastasia turned her gaze to the woman and realized that she needed to use polar magic, such as earth and wind, ice and fire. Turning to Isabella Shuhei in the body of a golem, stated that he could not use mana with this body, and then asked if the girl could, and she was taken aback. After that, Isabella sharply activated flame magic in one hand and ice magic in the other. Shuhei looked in surprise at the red-haired girl, who uses magic of this level without slowing down, and understood why Lucas always led her along. Watching the 2 elements combined, Shuhei was pleasantly surprised by Isabella's 7th level at such a young age and realized that she was a genius. With her palms out, Isabella sent out a powerful stream of ice and fire. Magic mixed together. Upon hitting the target, the 2 opposing energies created an explosion, followed by a blinding flash. Watching the attack, Ivan closed one eye from such a bright glow. Everything was, as the great shaman said. Although it was small, a gap appeared. After this, Ivan, disobeying the priestess, furiously flew out of the protective barrier and headed towards Nasdaq, and Anastasia tried to stop him with a scream. The jock, surrounded by gold and energy, wanting to attack the demigod, raised his fist in flight and threateningly addressed Nasdaq. Ivan broke through the dark energy of the monster, rushing towards it. After that, the man decisively activated Ivan's fist, illuminating the space around with a bright flash, shielding him from the flow of light. Anastasia angrily called Ivan an idiot for his carelessness. The same Juan, covered with drops of sweat, was now breathing heavily, moving away from the blow that had crushed his opponent's head. Ivan smugly and mockingly asked Nasdaq how he felt about it. Anastasia, watching with concern, furiously demanded that the jock immediately return to the protective barrier. He began to look around in fear. realizing that the dark energy of the demigod was condensing. Around him, then, Isabella, fiercely clenching her teeth and activating the opposite elements, rushed to the man's aid. She made another attack, sending to magics directly at Nos. Caught in the epicenter of the attack, Ivan flew away under the pressure of the blast wave, covering himself with his hands. After that, the jock rushed down, heading towards the protective dome of the shaman. When a satisfied Ivan was safe again, Chewai angrily turned on him, shouting at him to think about his moves after the attack and not put himself at risk. The giant Nasdog hovering in the sky concluded that his opponents were very annoying, and the guys noticed with displeasure that the monster had already returned to its original state. Isabella loudly concluded that, with the help of her magic, the cleft appears only briefly, not understanding how to do it. After this, the angry Nas directed a powerful stream of deadly energy directly at the guys. However, the barrier did not allow her to slip inside. Although it was compressed under strong pressure, quickly making her seals. The great shaman fiercely activated her mind attack, loudly asking everyone to gather the powers of their minds. As the onslaught of deadly energy grew stronger, the priestess explained that there was a limit to how much he could block. The demigod of death, noting that his power crushed the will to life. Ivan looked at the brunette in shock, as she furiously said that the stronger their beliefs and self-esteem, the easier it is to break them. Shuve and Ivan recognized themselves with horror in the words of the shaman, admitting it with one voice. After that, both looked at each other displeasedly, a little embarrassed after this. Muljad's piercing scream was heard, blue energy coming out of her eyes. Ivan and Shui simultaneously turned to look at the man with contempt, and Isabella loudly tried to find out if he was okay. When Muljad furiously walked away from the protective barrier, the taken-aback girl raised her hands and tried to stop him with a shout. He, screaming loudly, fell into the midst of deadly energy. Suddenly, Nasdaq began to suck out the vital forces of the man, who succumbed to the provocation, and he screamed even louder. Following him, Ivan flew out of the barrier, swearing in panic while they tried to call out to him. He abruptly grabbed the fugitive by the collar, intending to save him next. Ivan forcefully threw Muljad back into the protective barrier. Isabella grabbed the rescued man by the head, loudly asking the jock to come back quickly. Shui angrily called the guy, and the great shaman, holding the seal, watched with concern what was happening. Ivan, enveloped in deadly energy, opened his mouth wide as tears streamed from his eyes, while Nozdek's magic consumed him more and more. A voice sounded in his head, accusing the guy of ruining everything. Memories from the past flashed before Ivan, when he sat on his knees, in front of the turned away master,